Welcome to episode 41 of Fitness and Thinking, a podcast and newsletter fascinated by 6 pillars of fitness. We have the physical, mental, social, spiritual, emotional and financial state of being. And over the past 41 weeks, we have gotten into all of it. I feel very lucky to be stood here in the secret garden in an undisclosed location somewhere in the middle of England. The birds are calling, flowers are blooming, I'll be able to hang my washing out. This is the kind of weather that I like. Spring, I think, in the UK is one of the best seasons anywhere in the world. Get at me if you disagree. With all the natural sounds around, we're going to get straight into it. And if you have picked up on other things that you think could be added to it, comment, like, subscribe. Let us know what it is that gets you going. I wonder if a lot of us approach life from a restriction first mindset rather than an additive one. Chatting with Amy Stevens in episode 40, I really appreciated her approach of what can I eat? What can I do to perform better? And that, I think, is contra to a lot of diet culture. When I think about diet culture, particularly in the UK, and it sounds like it's similar in the US, there's this element of cutting carbs, cutting fat, maybe over-egging the protein, so to speak, and not actually reflecting on what it is that we're eating and not eating, and why that could be a problem, and also why it is that we're doing it in the first place. Do you actually need to lose weight? Are you a fighter? Has your doctor told you that you need to lose weight? If not, then maybe weight's not the issue. Maybe you do have an unhealthy amount of body fat on you. That could be true, and it could be helpful to remove that body fat. Maybe you've never looked how you've wanted to, but you're in a position where you don't have loads of responsibilities. You have the financial means to access a gym and to maybe eat foods that are nutritious, and maybe you can cook for yourself, or maybe you can buy prepared meals and you can set yourself up in a way that you've never done before. Different inputs leading to different outputs, and that's pretty exciting. I currently am working through an aesthetic block. So I'm telling you that I have actively tried to change how I look, and I really like my approach. My approach has come from trying to eat whole foods most of the time, and then when I felt sore, eating more foods rather than under eating. Actually, in those moments of feeling really achy, feeling like it's tough to get up, like I've not had much energy, not leaning into the supplements, but actually leaning into the food. And a lot of the food that I've lent into has been my pick and mix, my pizzas, and more recently, as we get into Easter season, mini eggs. I've eaten all of it and loved all of it. There was a moment where maybe I thought I'd spilled over. I went back to Sheffield and all of the old triggers were there. My friends weren't, and I absolutely found a buzz rather than comfort, because I don't think I found comfort in the food. I was probably a little bit frustrated with myself for eating the amount that I did, if I think about it, in a constructive way. But I bought all of the sweets, all of the chocolate, had a fun hour of eating them, and then let's say a rough 4 hours after that of processing and digesting them, and then feeling really dehydrated. But the week following that probably looked the best that I have in the year, and then the week after that even better. And all that happened was that I ate slightly fewer mini eggs in the weeks that followed. Bit more rice, bit more fruit. I asked myself, what can I add in? So when my stomach was feeling in bits, what could I have put into my diet that would be different? And it was more the complex carbs, it was more the fibers. It's not that I stopped eating the things that I liked, it's that I put in other things that I knew to be good for me, that I enjoy eating, that I can digest. And so we're at a point now where, even today, I've had my chocolate peanuts and my dried mango. I've got some frozen fruit thawing for after this, which I'm looking forward to eating in the garden. And I've had my chicken wrap, and I had my breakfast bagel, and I'm just feeling good for all of it. What can you add in to your day to make you feel better? What can you add in to your day to feel great? If it's exercise, if it's just getting your steps in, if it's sunlight, you can choose to do these things. You can choose to move from where you are towards those things. What can you add in? If you're not necessarily thinking about food or activity, you don't need to necessarily, but you just want a little bit of feeling good about the world, feeling good about things, feeling good about people. what could you do? Could you text a friend or loved one? For me, it was really nice to text my mums on Sunday and just let them know that they were loved before I went to work and was busy for the rest of the day. You know, I made sure at the top of the day that I let them know that I was thinking about them, that I love them, and the text that I got back was super sweet. And the love there, even at a distance, just brightened my day up as well. You know, I didn't do it for their responses. I didn't know that I was going to get to look at my phone before I went into shift, but I felt good for sending those messages, and I got good back. I got great back. Yeah. Could you help somebody with something? Maybe a task that they've been putting off for a little while. I've got a friend who's moving house, and even though I know that it'll be a ball ache, you know, I said I would love to help you with that. Like, really, I would. You just let me know, we'll get it sorted. So we've got a van booked, and we're going to move all this stuff. Great. It's a nice way to spend a weekend, and no doubt they would do the same thing for me. What can you add in to the day to make it better? Whether it's for you, for someone else. Yeah. I don't think you need to be altruistic, but you can definitely be positive. You can definitely contribute. I think it makes life easier. All right. Another lesson. Not everybody experiences the world in the same way that you do. One of the biggest lessons learned, I think, over the past 10 weeks is that no matter how much experience you have, no matter how good you think you might be at a thing or with people, you don't always know what's going on in somebody else's head. To some of you that might sound crazy, to some of you that might sound obvious. I recently have had it with new housemates, and thinking that I was politely asking for something that we all wanted, it transpired that actually nobody else was as fussed as I was. It turned out that my experience of, say, things being noisy in the house just wasn't experienced by anyone else. And you know, I've been in hostels recently, I've done a fair amount of backpacking. Regardless what my experience was, I think I was more aware of it because of other things going on in my life that I couldn't control. So, you know, you might be interested in what goes on outside of these recordings. I am paid a month behind the work that I do at my current gym. And if you have worked as a PT or you work freelance and you move to a new place, you have to build up your clientele. So for 8 weeks, I was working solidly, but didn't see any pay until week 8 for the time that I was putting into that physical space. So I think there was a low level money anxiety, which I'm not used to. There was a low level social anxiety. You know, I moved to Nottingham only knowing one person, and they've got their own bits going on, and so I had to cancel plans. Maybe cancelled them a bit too close to them happening, which was tough to take because then I didn't have a release. I didn't have anywhere to vent. I didn't have anybody to give me a hug, and that caught up with me. So actually, I was trying maybe too hard to control something that I couldn't, or have a feeling of control in a space that was new, where other things in my life, like getting paid, like my mates, weren't showing up. Does that make sense? So in the house, I think what felt like fair requests maybe came across as rule setting in a way that I was mortified to hear. I didn't sound like the sort of person that I would want to hang out with based on my housemates' recount of me. And while I think that there was truth on both sides, it didn't prevent the frustrations. It didn't prevent the anxieties. It didn't prevent the, you know, who are these people feelings on both sides. But had we had conversations sooner, had mitigating circumstances been different, maybe in all of our lives, but certainly on my side, I don't think we would have necessarily ended up with the big sit-down chat, you know, following a couple of weeks of frustrated text messages. Essentially, you might be more or less anxious than someone else. You might be more or less depressed than someone else. You might be more or less excited. Energy levels could be different. Yeah. If you feel that the other person isn't picking up on what you're putting out, and yet your intentions are good, rather than think that they're a bad person, maybe just ask what they're going through. You know, ideally ask them, But if you can't ask them, maybe put yourself in their shoes and try to understand why it is that they're not understanding what you're saying. Is it because you're not communicating clearly enough? Is it because they don't have an experience of what you're currently going through? Ultimately, comms are going to be the solution here. They are. Comms can be scary. You know, I know a lot of people who'd much rather send a text than have a phone call. I know a lot of people who would rather not talk than have a conversation in person. But from experience, not least as somebody who coaches other people, when you can have eye contact with a person, when you can have real time back and forth, when you can have space for the awkward silence, the laugh, the frustration, it's not easy. And sometimes you get this big chest churn feeling and the negative affect comes out. But making space for it nearly always helps to dissipate tensions and make space for things going forwards. So, not everybody experiences the world the same way as you, no matter how good your intentions are, no matter how much experience you've got. For the most part, don't take it personally. Just try and build the experience with the other person, other people, would be my recommendation. Yeah, we don't know everything. I know for a fact that I don't know everything, but that's part of what makes it fun. And it just presents endless opportunities to keep on learning. I do think, though, tied into the much better since is the fact that business has just gone up and up and up. And I needed to score a goal to know that I could score a goal. If you're feeling down on yourself, are you presenting yourself in a way that you'd be proud of? And that ties back into the earlier lessons. Are you the sort of person that you'd want to hang out with? You know, do you want to hang out with yourself in this moment? If not, why not? I bought the new shoes. People saw me in the gym training in the way that I want to train. Tidied the facial hair up, made sure that I cleaned all this up and looked how I wanted to look, and trained in the way that I wanted to train. Ate in a way that was conducive both to digestion but also just feeling good in my body, and all of that started to come together. I'm going to say, whether it's meditation or sauna, take time for yourself in the day if you can, between 10 and 20 minutes, to just sit and do nothing. I am really lucky at my current gym that there's a sauna, and I hadn't really had much experience with it. My first dip, so to speak, was with Goose in Sheffield, and I would love to chat with them maybe in the future. And they had various saunas on various floors and cold plunges. The cold plunges went to 3 degrees, and that contrast was wild. The shooting pain through my shins when we dipped into the 3 degrees cold. It really did go through me, and it was a little bit unnerving, so to speak. But the feeling afterwards, the kind of high, for want of a better word, was unreal. And then straight into pancakes. It was a pretty much perfect afternoon in Sheffield. I haven't had the pancakes, I haven't had the cold plunge since, but that feeling of just sitting and just letting it go, sometimes letting a lot of it go, has been wonderful. And I feel like my skin is good for it. I feel like my muscles have been good for it. I've been training really hard and across different disciplines and not feeling too rough in the mornings, despite the fact that sleep hasn't been the best over the past couple of months. Yeah, I think a lot of the mental benefits of just meditating, of not looking at your screen, of making space to sit or stand, just do nothing, are documented. You'll know about these. But applying that heat, having that external stimulus, forcing you to get rid of toxins, literally expunge some of the not so good in our bodies. Give it a shot. I did it 5 times last week, and I can't believe that I've never really had that routine before. Maybe this is the next lesson. I'm going to check the camera because this is a big one. Sometimes you don't have everything you need for the outcomes that you want. We've already said different inputs for different outputs. I believe myself to be a good coach. I have client testimonials, client results. I have this feeling when I'm one-to-one with people of understanding them, whether physically or socially, maybe mentally, maybe spiritually sometimes, that is energizing. I rarely work with people and feel drained for it. There are some people who are exhausting, don't get me wrong, those people do exist, but the act of coaching for me is energizing. I can have back to back to back to back days, 5, 6, 7 PT sessions, and feel more energized than, say, back to back to back calls as I did in my corporate job. Now, that's not me trying to say that PT is better than corporate or anything like that. I'm just saying my experience of client calls for a marketing agency versus one-to-one and people working on their bodies is very different. And there was a time when the marketing was very exciting. But where I'm up to now, on Wednesday last week, I had 3 in a row and set up a couple of people online. It was just wonderful. It was maybe one of my favorite days this year, and it was work. It was purely work. I didn't get to go to Run Club in the evening. I was editing the podcast. I was slammed. It was basically 7 in the morning till about 9 in the evening. I did get some sauna in there though, so I managed to have some self-care as well. It just felt so good. It felt incredible. And I think I wasn't able to do that this time last year. It doesn't matter that my coaching hasn't necessarily changed over the past year. Like, what I would have coached last March is what I would coach now. But I didn't have the gym last year. I didn't have the people. I didn't have the headspace. Maybe I didn't have the right shoes on. Maybe I didn't have the right shave on my head. Maybe I didn't have the right people around me. There could be all sorts of things that I did have, but I didn't have everything that I've got now that makes right now feel as good as it does. I've got the same qualifications. I've got a lot of the same kind of coaching experiences. 2025 was a good year of coaching, but it wasn't necessarily as involved as 2023 when I was getting further qualifications, I was working in pure gym, and I was working online. I learned probably the most in 2023 of any year of work. 2024 was me coasting. I built up, accelerated to a point, and I was able to keep that going. 2025, actually coming away from traveling and just being online and not being in the gym, I think in a way cost me, just being honest with you. Things slowed down a little bit. That was part of my decision to go back into a gym, because with that slowdown was that feeling of, am I still a good PT? I didn't have the proof to suggest that I was. And we discussed this before, do the thing. Confidence through competence. If I want to know that I'm a good PT, I need to be PTing. Does that make sense? So by putting myself into a gym, I had that crucial aspect of coaching, which I didn't have before. And I think being in this current gym, the people around me, so staff generally, but there are competitive bodybuilders, competitive high rocks athletes, and hybrid athletes, and marathon runners. These people inspire me, and then I get to inspire other people. And into that mix, I'm the only person doing calisthenics at the moment, apart from maybe one bikini competitor who reckons that dragon squats are in her wheelhouse. So I would like to train with her at some point. It's just fun, and I think that comes across. I've found my fun, I've found my people, and now I'm in a position to coach and to train and to push on in a way that I wasn't last year, despite wanting to, despite having the intentions to. I've got what I need now to go in the direction that I want to be the person that I want to be. And so, yeah, I think it's a lesson that's a good one. You can have the best intentions, but maybe you don't have everything gathered that you need to build whatever it is that comes next. I'd like to help you with that. And it might just be a chat, and it might just be that we run through the practical considerations, or maybe it is like a mental block. I'm in a good space. I feel that I'll be able to contribute. But you could ask your partner about this. You could ask siblings, you could ask parents, you ask your best mate. I'm sure they'll be able to help you too. Best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. So this is John in episode 34. The second best time is right now. In fact, chatting to people who told me about their back pains, about never being able to lift weights. I'm going to work with somebody tomorrow, first time as a PT, just based on half an hour with them last week, where they told me that they couldn't leg press, they couldn't do hyperextensions, that the weights section was scary, and within 10 minutes we had them moving around. And honestly, the unlock of the hyperextensions, that sensation of just being stretched out over a hip pad. So if you don't know, it's a bench that's shaped like this. You've got your legs here and you wedge your heels in and your body folds over the bench, and then you use the strength in your calves, your hamstrings, your glutes, your back to come back up to this position. And you get to have your head under your heart, which is a lovely feeling. If you know your yoga, you're probably used to it. Maybe you take it for granted. But in everyday life, it's very rare for us to be in that position with our heads under our hearts. And when you get into hyperextensions, I love to do them at the end of sessions. That big feeling of stretch is so good. It's so relaxing. And she had that moment of, wow, not only can I do it, but it feels good. So what, you could have done it 20 years ago and you didn't. You can do it now. Plant the seed, let the tree grow. And obviously it's the same with financial investments. I'm not a financial advisor, maybe I need to make that clear, but rather than have things in just cash or have things in low interest savings, if you've got your emergency funds, for a lot of people this will be between £5,000 to £8,000. If you've got that safe amount, maybe you could play around. Maybe you start looking at a stocks and shares ISA and you allow compound interest to let that grow, but you need to plant it now to reap the rewards later down the line. All right, last lesson before I eat my thawing frozen fruit in this spring sunset. Ask. Whether this is a new point for you or something that you have to learn again and again and again and again, ask. Ask when you don't know. Ask when you need help. Ask when you're genuinely interested in somebody. And that could be a platonic thing, that could be a romantic thing, but giving people space to excel, to instruct, to help, the smiles that you can get, the sense of love and gratitude. You know, if your partner's into something that maybe isn't in your wheelhouse, but you give them the time to explain why it's of interest to them, that could transform your relationship. You don't have to have the same hobbies as your friends or your parents or your loved ones, but allowing them the time, the space, the enjoyment, the love for their thing, I've heard of a couple of examples recently that have really moved me. And you know, while I wouldn't necessarily go to some of the conventions that I've heard about, I genuinely love the experiences that were described and how my mates reported their partners feeling about their involvement with their partner's thing. Does that make sense? And for me, in the gym, I've got a couple of clients who I'm learning from. There's one guy who I'd love to introduce you to. He's more than double my age, but he's dating and he listens to podcasts and he listens to a lot of the same bands as me. He went to rescue rooms in Nottingham recently and told me that I was going to have a great time at the gig that I went to 2 weekends ago. And I did. And it was really nice to know that I was stood in the space that he was in, enjoying himself. You know, I learned from him that it's all right to be new to a place. It's all right to be new to conversations all over again. And I can't wait to feel as energized about life as I do now, as he does now. I think there's a lot to be said for intergenerational expertise. So maybe you don't have grandparents, but can you involve yourself in the community in different ways? So my gym has more older folk in than I'm used to, but there's a big northeastern contingent who have homed in on me, which is so sweet. And to be able to talk about Whitby and Whitley Bay and Northumberland and Mackhams and Geordies and Smoggies is just such a laugh, you know? and I've been playing Dire Straits before my classes, and just seeing people's eyes light up when they recognize a track. Yeah. Ask people who are outside of your pool as much as are in it. And I think particularly when it comes to this sense of pain and lived in experience, but also the want to keep on pushing, yeah, they inspire me all the time. And I know that I'm not the only one in the mix with older friends. If you've read The Courage to be Disliked, you've got the youth and the philosopher. If you've read Plato, you've got Plato and Socrates. I think there is something to be said for the youth and the elder. Find yourself some elders if you're more in my position, or maybe if you're an elder listening, watching, look out for somebody like me who wants to learn. Like, genuinely, I think there can be that fear that we won't be understood, that our experiences won't align, but that ties us right back in to the start. You know, what can you add into your day that's different? Are people not understanding you because you've not communicated your experience? Would people want to know your experience if you communicated it to them? If you enjoyed this episode of Fitness and Thinking, please do leave a like, comment, and do subscribe if you haven't already. Lots of people will watch an episode or two but not hit that subscribe button, meaning that they miss the future episodes, meaning that maybe to those algorithms it doesn't look like they're that interested overall in the project. But I get the sense that more and more of you are. We're into triple digits in terms of followers and people tuning in both for the podcast and the newsletter. And even this cat is checking us out. Yeah, it's class to have you here. I feel great for having this space to talk, and like with the coaching, just generally feel energized when it comes to thinking about fitness differently. All right, you've been class. I've been Jackman. This is episode 41 of F&T. I'll see you in the next one.